It was an ordinary night in Memphis, but inside a theater rented exclusively for him, the King of Rock stopped being a legend and became a man. When Elvis sat beside her, few knew that this simple gesture would forever change his life, and hers. July 6, 1972, from that moment would emerge one of the most intense and controversial love stories in music. Want to know how a stolen kiss in the dark sparked a 4.5-year love filled with glamour, secrets, and pain? Then hold tight, because this story goes deep. It all began on a hot July night in 1972 in Memphis. Elvis Presley, already separated from Priscilla, was going through a period of deep loneliness. The man who once captivated crowds with his smile and unmatched voice found himself surrounded by silence when the stage lights went out. It was in that moment that fate placed him face to face with a young woman named Linda Thompson. She was only 22 years old, a college student, and newly crowned Miss Tennessee USA. Linda was a typical Southern girl from a modest family, polite, shy, and with an innocent glow that contrasted with the world of excess Elvis had long been accustomed to. That night, the singer had rented the Memphian Theater, a cinema he often reserved to watch movies until dawn, away from public curiosity. Mutual friends invited Linda and introduced her to him during that private screening. The moment, as she later described, felt like a movie scene. As soon as she entered, Linda felt Elvis's gaze. He wore a black cape with golden details and exuded that inexplicable magnetism. According to Linda, the King of Rock seemed to radiate light. She sat a few rows behind him, but within minutes he approached, greeted her, and began a shy, almost childlike conversation, asking where she was from and complimenting her accent. That simple exchange was the beginning of a connection that would change both of their lives. The first kiss happened that same night, after the movie ended. Elvis invited her to dinner, and in the car, with a slow song playing on the radio, the magic happened. Linda would always remember that moment as sweet and respectful, saying he was a gentleman, kind, and seemed more nervous than she was. It was the start of an intense relationship that would unite two opposite worlds, the global superstar and the young woman who had never left Memphis. Despite the age and lifestyle differences, they shared similar values, especially love for family and faith. Both had grown up in Christian homes and held traditional views about loyalty and companionship. And you, what do you think? Do you believe that first kiss was fate, coincidence, or a meeting written in the stars? Tell me in the comments what that moment means to you. In the following weeks, Linda was invited to visit Graceland, Elvis's legendary mansion. She couldn't have imagined that from that day on, it would become her home. What was meant to be a casual visit turned into daily life together. Elvis liked having her around, not just for her beauty, but for the peace she brought. Linda, in turn, saw in him more than a pop icon. She met a sensitive, insecure, sometimes needy, and deeply spiritual man. He spoke about his fear of loneliness, the burden of being idolized, and how, behind the stage lights, there was a void that was hard to fill. In the first months, the relationship felt like a fairy tale. Linda traveled with Elvis, watched his rehearsals, joined him on tours, and was treated warmly by his team. Many close friends claimed she brought balance to his life. She encouraged him to take care of himself, to sleep better, to eat properly. Unlike many people around him, Linda wasn't after fame or benefits. What she wanted was the man behind the legend. And he, in turn, found in her a source of calm. When they were together, Elvis often played piano and sang just for her, old gospel songs that reminded him of his childhood. These were simple moments, without an audience, when he finally seemed free from the burden of being Elvis Presley. The couple shared a similar sense of humor. They laughed at little things, made inside jokes, and called each other affectionate nicknames. He called her Little Darlin', and she called him EP. Graceland, once a fortress of fame and isolation, became a home full of life. Linda decorated rooms, helped organize routines, and adapted to Elvis's nocturnal schedule. He slept at dawn and woke at dusk. There was intimacy, but also the challenge of living in a world controlled by bodyguards, assistants, and endless commitments. Still, Linda remained strong. She understood the weight Elvis carried and never tried to change him. In the early years, the relationship was marked by romantic gestures, laughter, and genuine affection. Close friends recalled that by her side, Elvis seemed lighter. He introduced her proudly and said she was the sweetest woman in the South. That period, between 1972 and 1973, is remembered as one of the most stable of the singer's life. They went to the movies together, took late-night drives through Memphis, and spent hours talking about the future. There were plans for marriage, children, even a simpler life away from the stage. The relationship between Elvis Presley and Linda Thompson was born by chance but grew rooted in real feelings. She entered his life at a time of transition when the artist was searching for inner peace and a new meaning to fame that no longer fulfilled him. And for a few years, Linda was exactly that, the refuge the king needed. The first kiss at the Memphian Theater wasn't just a romantic gesture. It was the beginning of a love story that still moves fans worldwide, revealing the most human side of a man the world only knew as a legend. Now, I want to know your opinion. Do you think Linda was truly the great love of Elvis's life? Or that the king's heart could never belong to just one woman? Write it here in the comments. I really want to know what you think. In the years following their first encounter, the lives of Linda Thompson and Elvis Presley became a roller coaster of emotions, marked by glamour, affection, and challenges that tested the limits of love. Their routine was both fascinating and exhausting. Living beside Elvis meant existing in a universe where the day began at night and ended when the sun rose. It was a rhythm shaped by the habits of a man who, despite fame and fortune, struggled with insomnia, career pressure, and the weight of being the idol of an entire generation. Graceland, the famous mansion in Memphis, was the stage for this intense coexistence. Linda quickly became part of the household. She cared for the details of the home, the pets, and most importantly, Elvis's well-being. The house, once a silent fortress, was filled again with laughter, music, and late-night talks. The singer found in Linda a comforting and protective presence. She worried about his schedule, his meals, and even his rest. Elvis, accustomed to people interested in his name, finally felt seen as a man, not as a myth. But life with the King of Rock was not simple. Daily life followed impulses and unpredictability. Suddenly, Elvis would decide to travel in the middle of the night or gather friends for all-night movie sessions. There were nights when he'd spend hours at the piano, alternating between gospel and rock songs, and others when he'd withdraw in silence, lost in thought. Linda learned to follow this irregular rhythm, balancing her youth with the hectic pace that surrounded him. Still, she remained patient, understanding, and above all, loyal. During tours, Linda was always present. She traveled with Elvis, watched rehearsals and performances, always discreetly in the background. She witnessed the audience's enchantment, the deafening applause, and the unique energy of an artist at his peak. But she also saw what few did: the fatigue, the stress, the physical and emotional exhaustion after each show. Many times, while others celebrated, she stayed by his side, caring for him, offering comfort, preparing something to eat. This devotion earned his deep trust. Linda became his emotional refuge, someone who understood him without judgment. Elvis was a generous man, known for grand gestures. He loved to give gifts, to surprise. He'd buy cars, jewelry, even puppies for friends and staff just to see them smile. Linda said he had a huge heart and that small gestures touched him more than public tributes. The King of Rock was, deep down, a needy man, hungry for love and acceptance. That's why her presence meant more than company. It was emotional security. When he felt vulnerable, Elvis sought comfort in long talks with Linda, in shared prayers, and in the faith they both held. However, fame and pressure came at a high price. His erratic lifestyle began affecting his health. The constant use of prescribed medication to control pain and sleep became part of his routine. Linda saw it up close and tried to help, encouraging healthier habits and reducing excesses. At times, he seemed willing to change, but relapses were inevitable. This silent battle was one of the hardest tests of their relationship. Linda, with no experience in such matters, did her best to stay present, offering the kind of support few could give. Despite the hardships, they still had moments of genuine joy. Elvis loved to joke with Linda and the Memphis Mafia, the group that followed him everywhere. It was a chaotic environment, but full of life. The pranks, the laughter, and the improbable stories filled Graceland's nights. Linda, with her gentle humor and simplicity, balanced the excesses of that circle. Elvis called her an angel, saying she had a special light capable of calming even his stormiest days. Their love was real, but surrounded by challenges. Fame made him possessive, and the routine controlled by security and commitments kept the couple in a bubble. Still, there was a strong bond, built on affection and loyalty. Linda believed the real Elvis wasn't the stage star, but the man who read the Bible at dawn, who cried listening to gospel songs, who made silly jokes, and who loved walking barefoot at home. That was the Elvis she loved. Over time, wear and tear became inevitable. The work pace, travels, and health crises accumulated. Linda tried to keep the relationship stable, but saw him growing increasingly distant, trapped in a cycle of obligations and worries. Yet she didn't give up. She kept caring, praying, believing that love could balance the chaos. The years between 1973 and 1976 marked both the peak and the decline of their relationship, but also proved how important Linda was in his life. To Elvis, she was an anchor amid the storm, and to her, he was the most intense and transformative love of her life. Their years together show that behind the image of a legend was a human being with fragility and simple dreams, and that even surrounded by fame and luxury, what Elvis most sought was exactly what Linda gave him: care, love, and a home amid chaos. The love between Elvis Presley and Linda Thompson lasted 4.5 years, but like every relationship lived at extremes, it wore down over time. By the end of 1976, Linda realized the man she loved was drifting away, consumed by pressure, exhaustion, and inner struggles. Despite their affection and connection, their relationship had become a cycle of failed attempts at stability. Elvis swung between tenderness and isolation, retreating into his thoughts, pain, and increasingly erratic routine. Linda knew love still existed, but began to understand that it might not be enough to save him from himself. The decision to walk away didn't come from a fight or a sudden breakup. It was a slow and painful process. Linda described that period as one of the hardest in her life because there was no lack of love, only the realization that staying meant losing herself. She loved him, but could no longer keep up with the sleepless nights, the impulsive trips, and the unstable environment surrounding him. What was once passion and adrenaline had turned into exhaustion. Still, she left with respect, quietly and lovingly, without scandal or press statements. She knew he needed peace and decided the best she could do was to leave with dignity. And you? If you were in Linda's place, would you have stayed with Elvis until the end, or would you have done as she did, walk away to preserve your own peace? Write it in the comments. I want to know what you'd do. Even after their separation, Linda never stopped caring for Elvis. They kept in touch by phone and through close friends. She asked about his health, his tours, and hoped he'd find balance. In later interviews, Linda said she sensed something was wrong. Elvis was under immense pressure, surrounded by people who often couldn't say no to him. That loneliness, masked by fame and applause, began to weigh more than ever. Still, when they spoke, he always tried to sound strong, saying he was fine, even when inside he was fighting fatigue and emptiness. The following months were silent. Linda tried to move on, to rebuild her life, but Elvis's memory was everywhere. She used to say that even from afar, she felt his presence. There was a spiritual bond that never broke. When he passed in 1977, Linda received the news as a devastating blow. Even though she was no longer by his side, the loss felt like it happened inside her own home. The feeling wasn't regret, but sadness that she couldn't do more. She always believed that if love alone could heal, Elvis would still be alive. But she understood that no matter how deep the feeling, there were battles he had to fight alone. As years went by, Linda learned to turn pain into remembrance. In interviews and her autobiography, she always spoke of Elvis with affection, avoiding exposing sensitive aspects of their private life. Her intention was never to feed public curiosity, but to preserve the memory of a man who, to her, was more than an icon. He was a companion, a friend, a complex and fascinating human being. Linda always said Elvis had a heart bigger than his success. He was a man who gave extravagant gifts, but valued simple gestures. He cried listening to gospel songs, laughed at his own jokes, and had a sweetness that contrasted with his superstar image. Years later, reflecting on their relationship, Linda revealed that what marked her most was the genuine love between them, a love that endured hardships and never lost respect. She said the Elvis she knew was deeply affectionate, spiritual, and grateful to those who loved him. And despite health issues and suffocating fame, he never stopped believing in the power of love and faith. That belief stayed with him until the end and was what she chose to keep in her heart. Linda went on with her life, built her career, and formed a family, but never stopped honoring the man who defined her youth. She continued attending events dedicated to Elvis's legacy, always remembering him with a serene smile, without resentment. In every story, she emphasized that she lived beside a real man with virtues and flaws, not just a legend. And that perspective made her one of the most respected voices among those who truly knew the king. The story of Linda Thompson and Elvis Presley goes far beyond a celebrity romance. It's a story about love, loyalty, and the price of fame. It shows how a man's greatness can coexist with silent loneliness, and how, even in the darkest moments, true love leaves marks time cannot erase. Linda was a privileged witness to Elvis's humanity, and her memories help us see the artist behind the myth. For her, the love they shared never ended. It simply transformed into gratitude and longing. And for millions of fans, that story lives on, a reminder that Elvis Presley's greatest legacy wasn't just his music, but his capacity to love deeply, even when the whole world treated him like a god. And if this story touched your heart, it's because Elvis's legacy lives on, not only through his music, but through the emotions he inspired in each of us. If you also believe the King of Rock never left the stage, then this is your place. Take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any upcoming videos with stories, curiosities, and iconic moments from Elvis Presley's life. Leave your like, it helps the channel grow and keeps the King's legacy alive for more people. And I really want to know your opinion. What memory, song, or moment from Elvis has most marked your life? Write it in the comments. I read them all. And if you know someone who's also a true fan, share this video with them. Let's keep this flame alive, spreading love, respect, and admiration for one of the greatest artists the world has ever known. Because as long as there are fans, Elvis Presley will never be forgotten.